My uncle my uncle has his own carpet cleaning business. So he drives all around Cincinnati to all the properties that he goes and cleans carpets for. And every once in a while he will drive by his childhood home. Well, about 3 years ago, he was driving by the childhood home and saw that it was being torn down. It was the only house on the street that was being torn down. So it really, so my dad and his brothers, it was very, it made them very distraught that their childhood home is being torn down. So what they did in the evening time when no one was around, they went back and started taking bricks home with them. And in doing so, and remember those old like blue-green metal awnings over top of porches? They started cutting that up as well. And what they did is they took a brick and they took part of the awning, and they made these little like memorial keepsakes, and put a picture of their house that was on it too. And because there's a lot of memories that happened in the house, both good and bad. A lot of memories that were there. So now many of us have. I don't have one, but many in the family have one of those little bricks and awning thing that's in the house as a memorial. But the thing is, it was definitely something that was very, a very distraught time for them. The thing that was the memory of their childhood is now gone. And so they have a keepsake now to remind themselves of this, But it's one of those things where they had to find a way to figure out how to move into a new reality of this thing that was part of their life, their whole lives. No one's lived there in 35 years, but it's that house was where they lived. So they had to figure out how to find this new reality. And I think that's what Jesus is talking about today in our gospel. Because I think when we look at the gospel today, he's telling the people, he says, this generation, this will happen. The sun will be darkened, the moon will be darkened, the stars will fall out of the sky. But we can walk outside and see the sun, the moon, the stars, all these things. So the question is, what does he really mean by this? Because when I started Mass today, I said, we're 2 weeks away from Advent. So we're looking at all the readings right now are looking at all the end times, the second coming of Christ. Because what we do, Advent is about preparing for the coming of Christ at Christmas, his birth. And then we live the life of Christ. So then we go to Lent, which is about his preparing for Easter, for his death and resurrection. And then we live his life of Christ in preparation for the second coming at the end of time. We do that every single year, over and over and over again. Well, we're at a point in time where it's like, well, now we're looking at the end time. So what does Jesus really mean by all this? And I think, if you look in the temple in Jerusalem, they would have images of the stars, the sun, the moon. And the menorah, the great big candle, like the number of candles, that was symbolic of the cosmos. So a candle was for the sun, the moon, the stars. They said within this generation, you will see these things come down. Well, within 40 years, the Romans destroyed the temple. And it's still destroyed today. So all those things that Jesus is talking about, the sun, the moon, the stars, had been taken down. And they said that will happen within this generation. This very cataclysmic event happened to Jewish people. But at the same time, he also says, look to what lasts forever. Within a year of him talking about this is his death and resurrection. So it's like when he's telling them, when this major event happens, remember what lasts forever. Remember what lasts forever. Meaning he's now risen from the dead. That lasts forever. His words might be taken away. His life's not taken away. Things of the world may be taken away. But he lasts forever. Look to him. And I think there's many times in our own times when we go through our own personal times of tribulation, how do we then look to that? Jesus reminds us, look to the things that last forever. I remember about 2 years ago, I was sitting in a spiritual conference for the priests, and we had a priest from New Orleans come up and talk to us, especially of this new reality that we're living right now, and I'm driving like a madman between both churches on a daily basis, And this is what he said. He said, "Gentlemen, remember this." He goes, "Any suffering not transferred to the cross is transmitted to other things." Any suffering that's not transferred to the cross is transmitted to other things. Meaning, if we don't allow our Lord to help us walk through our struggles, our discouragements, our bitterness, our anger, our loss, it'll come out in different ways. Maybe how we may take it out on somebody else. Maybe we may not deal with it in the most healthy way possible. He says, all suffering that's not transferred to the cross is transmitted to other things. So how do we seek that healing, that peace, that love, that mercy from God? Help us walk through those things in our life that becomes those new realities for us. To help us keep walking forward. And knowing that our Lord is the one who has walked this path already. And the thing is, in the gospel today, he has not left the apostles alone right there, or the disciples alone right there. He says, look to the fig tree. Now the fig tree is the only tree around Jerusalem, in that area there, that's not an evergreen tree. All other trees are evergreen. That's the only tree that reblooms and grows new fruit throughout the year. So he's saying, look to that tree. That tree brings about new life. So in that way, look to the resurrection. Look to things that don't pass away. So that in those times, we can look to our Lord and see the things that we need, his healing, his life, his new ways for us each day. So this day, as we're in our 33rd Sunday of Ordinary Time, in 2 weeks we start Advent. Well, there's things at times, maybe in what we're going through right now. Because I can look at my life at times and think when in my disappointment or my discouragement or my bitterness or my anger at times, when I had not given it over to our Lord, or at least try to, how did it not turn out the way very well, But asking our Lord, how can we take those things to him? And that his cross brings his resurrection, and that new life each day. How can we walk that path with him? And knowing, even if there are our own personal tribulations, how can, during those times, look to things that never pass away, to his resurrection and new life?